And we are live. What is up, everybody? It is July. It is June 30th. It is almost one of my favorite months of July, and I am sitting here on a beautiful Southern California day, casting a show match today between one of many from Team StarCraft Ascension and Quantic Gaming's very own Hawk. Now, I'm sure most of you know who Hawk is, and if you don't know who Hawk is, well, then you at least know who Team Quantic is. Quantic is one of the largest, most successful, most recognizable names in professional gaming, and that goes across the board. That's all sorts of different games, including StarCraft. They have some really solid players like Naniwa, Sase, and players that are a little less known, but still really, really good players like Quantic's Hawk. Now, one of many is one of the better Protoss players, I think, on Team StarCraft Ascension, and I know that guys on Team StarCraft Ascension will probably be like, "No, I'm better than he is." But like, I've gotten a chance to see this guy play quite a few times. Because Team StarCraft Ascension actually participated in the Indie StarCraft Team League. They only recently just got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs after a brutal 7-game series with Team Impulse. The last game actually being Impulse Hyper versus Sony, I think, was the last Zerg that that Team StarCraft Ascension had. In case you guys don't know, by the way, I do a lot of casting for the Indie StarCraft Team League, and it's definitely worth taking a look at. They are going to be finishing up the last of the first round of the playoffs. I think the last series is going to be between like my intent and one other team that's still available. I'll have to double check. I don't have it in front of me. But yeah, that's definitely worth seeing. But StarCraft Ascension, they fought their best. They performed pretty well in the group stages, but unfortunately they weren't able to take down Team Impulse, so they were knocked out of that league. But that doesn't mean that one of many. That's not any sort of criticism of one of many. He definitely pulled his own weight in that clan war, and as he has in several others. And during the time that I've managed to see one of many play, I've noticed that he does have a very solid Protoss versus Zerg, so that should come in handy for him against Quantic Hawk, who is obviously one of the best Zergs in North America, depending on who you talk to. I'm just going to get a quick look at both of their profiles here. Quantic Hawk is actually in Grandmasters League. He has a record of 49-51, which is a pretty good record in Grandmasters League. And one of many is no slouch himself. He is a rank 4 Masters. Last I checked, yeah, rank 4 Masters with a win ratio of 45-35. So, without further ado, I think we're just going to be getting into this next game. Once again, thank you for joining us. I know that we have a post for StarCraft April. StarCraft Ascension's April has a post on Team Liquid and Reddit. So if you guys are tuning in right now, once again, if you guys don't know me, I am Vindicast. This is my live stream. I will be doing this show match. It's a best of 7 for today. Hopefully it won't be over too quickly, but hopefully it won't be over. It won't take like 3 or 4 hours to actually complete either, because my own lack of judgment actually has me in not the best physical condition for today, but hopefully I will still be able to do a pretty good job casting these two players and make sure that I can do justice to the level of play that these guys will definitely be demonstrating today. So I am just waiting for the countdown to get started. We should be getting into this game in just a little bit. Once again, if you are just joining us, this is a show match between Quantic Hawk and one of many from Team StarCraft Ascension, and I think, well, Hawk is ready. Is one of many ready? Well, we should be seeing in just a moment. The first game will be on GSL Antigua Shipyard. There's so many versions of this map out nowadays. I don't even know which one this might be. I don't know if it's got the gold base at it or not, but it'll probably definitely be cross-spawn positions. And this is actually a really interesting map for Protoss vs Zerg. I'm probably going to do some analysis of the map once we get into the game. But we are actually getting the countdown started right now. We should be jumping into this game in just a little moment. I'm excited, guys. I haven't had a chance to do very much of anything on my solo stream lately. If you guys are one of my fans, I don't have that many, but if you guys are one of my fans and you have been waiting for one of my casts to actually come out, I'm sorry about that. I've been doing a lot of other sorts of things with casting. But enough of that. Spawning up here in the top left, we have the blue Protoss player from Team StarCraft Ascension. He is one of many. And spawning down here in the bottom right position of the map, GSL Antigua Shipyard, we have the red Zerg player from Team Quantic, Quantic Gaming's very own Hawk. Okay, now one of the things about Antigua Shipyard that makes it so interesting, I think, for this particular matchup is just the layout. Well, this is mostly in most maps, actually. These map features are pretty important. But we have the layout of the third base as well as the natural. And the travel distance between these two bases is actually kind of long. It requires a decent amount of creep spread to actually connect them all together, and this back door does make it slightly vulnerable to things like roach timing attacks, gateway, immortal sentry timing attacks, all sorts of different timing attacks on the low ground that can actually affect the third base layout over here. And then the other big thing is that, okay, this is the map. This is the version of the map that does not have that gold base. But the other thing is that even though the third base position is relatively easy for both races to take in comparison to some other maps, the fourth base position is a lot more difficult. The middle of the map is actually typically used in Terran versus Zerg, for example, as the fourth base position for either race. And so obviously if you have like your fourth base out in the middle of the map, it leaves you slightly vulnerable to all sorts of other different kind of timing attacks, or all sorts of like different sorts of like maneuvers that you can encounter in the late game. The other thing about this map obviously is that there is only that single watchtower that is surrounded by the smoke. The smoke actually plays a very big role in this map for this matchup, and actually all matchups in general. And other than this one watchtower that's on the high ground here, the rest of the middle is actually pretty wide open, which makes for all sorts of interesting sorts of engagements that you will see out in the early game. And for our Protoss player, we actually see him starting with a Nexus first, even before Forge. So he is actually being a little risky for this matchup, just to start off on game one. The reason why I say that it's risky is because this natural, if you haven't noticed, has actually got a pretty wide ramp to open up with. So things like early pulls, for example, could actually do a lot of damage on this map. And Oneofmany hasn't actually even gone for any sort of harassment at the natural base. Like normally you'll see Protoss go for things like pylon blocks or things like that, just to kind of slow down the hatchery timing for the Zerg player. And the thing is that he went for this Nexus first build, but I don't think he'll actually be able to. He might be able to throw down one additional pylon that will be able to slow down these Zerglings from actually being able to get up this ramp and cause some damage into the main base. But we're Hawk going for some kind of like extremely early pull, for example, like some Zergs have taken to doing. This ramp is not one of the easiest ramps in the world to defend against things like early Zergling pressure, and if you're going for this Nexus first, you will not have the Forge down in time to be able to construct a cannon in your main base without losing probes. But none of that's actually going to happen because Quantic Hawk wasn't able to actually get his Zerglings up into the main base of Oneofmany to cause any sort of economic damage. And we do have this like funky wall off going up here, up at the top of the ramp. So the next stage of this matchup is obviously that the Zerg will want to like try to out expand his Protoss opponent. That's usually the way that Zergs have been playing this matchup. The Forge Fast Expand, even though it is a good build for getting your economy up and getting your tech going, it is not a very good build for causing early forms of harassment. For that, like when I say early, I mean like extremely early. Things like 2-gate zealot pressure, like 3-gate pressure, that sort of thing. It makes it very easy for Zerg to get that third base location up relatively quickly, because the earliest forms of aggression won't come for a decent amount of time. And actually, these Zerglings are just able to run past that hole that was in Oneofmany's defenses right there, and he was able to actually get some Zerglings into the main base. So these Zerglings, if Quantic Hawk can actually keep them alive, should actually be able to tell him all sorts of different important information, like the fact that his opponent is going for a Stargate, for example. Stargate openings, it's a double Stargate opening, actually. Okay, so this is normally going to lead into some kind of heavy Phoenix build. I have seen in the past heavy sorts of Void Ray openings, but usually late in the recent metagame, I should say, just to kind of like catch my breath and rephrase myself a little bit. In the recent metagame, if you go for things like this double Stargate build, it usually means that you're going for some kind of heavy Phoenix opening. And you know what? This actually might do some damage, but Hawk does know about it. So the biggest problem for him right now is actually going to be securing all of these overlords. These phoenixes are going to actually be able to hunt down a lot of overlords, and Quantic Hawk actually has all of his overlords actually spread out around the map, very vulnerable to these phoenixes if these phoenixes decide they want to start hunting them down. We actually have 2 Void Rays in production in conjunction with that one Phoenix that was actually built. So it may look like Oneofmany is actually going for some kind of very heavy Void Ray build, and Quantic Hawk actually has a pretty interesting response to this. Rather than try and turtle up and try and defend his economy the way that Zerg typically would, he's actually just going to go for this Baneling bust. And the thing is that because all of the gas for Oneofmany has been invested in these double Stargates, he's not going to have gas for sentries. And without sentries, these Banelings are going to have nothing actually blocking them from getting up the ramp and through the main wall of Oneofmany. Void Rays are good against a lot of things, but one thing they are not very good against is Zerglings. These Zerglings are going to be able to get a lot of probe kills. There are 2 Void Rays out on the map, but those Void Rays are not actually going to be able to do anything against all these Zerglings that are just streaming into the base, actually slaughtering tons of probes. A good Baneling explosion actually does go down on a lot of probes right there, and I think that actually might do it for the first game, ladies and gentlemen. Quantic Hawk has actually reduced Oneofmany's probe count to a measly 6 after that Baneling bust. That is not what I normally see against double Stargate openings, but it was nonetheless effective. So Quantic Hawk takes the first game after a brilliant use of a Baneling Zergling bust. He knew, alright, the thing is that a single Stargate, it allows you to have enough gas for things like sentries, because you're not so invested in that Stargate tech that you're not going to be able to build anything else. But because he was going for that very early Stargate tech and he built 2 of them, the Stargates alone cost 300 gas. That's 3 sentries that Oneofmany could have been able to construct. And the Phoenixes and Void Rays on top of that, that is just so much early gas that went into that heavy air tech. And, I mean, the result kind of spoke for itself. Without any gas for sentries, that slow Baneling bust just did a ton of damage. And once the Speedlings were in the main base, there was nothing that Oneofmany could actually do to hold them off. So that was actually a really cool strategy by Quantic Hawk. Baneling bust back in the beta in like early season 1 and 2 was actually all the rage. And I remember doing all sorts of Baneling busts as a random player against Terrans and Protoss sometimes too, actually, as a matter of fact. But sentries, Protoss was just figuring out how to use sentries back in that day, so they were just like, oh, well, I'm asking sentries anyway because like Zerg hasn't figured out how to deal with force field just yet. So Baneling busts are almost completely pointless because I'm just going to have like tons of sentries that I'm building already just to force field off my ramp, and it's not going to do any damage. But nowadays, Protoss have actually been cutting corners lately. I mean, Wolf was saying it recently in the GSTL, and Artosis has actually been saying it also in the GSL, that for some reason Protoss has just been neglecting some of their early sentry builds. They've gotten a lot of the races have actually become complacent in the early game, and they've been cutting corners. Terran has been cutting early tech labs for Marauders and anti-armor support. Zerg has, well, they're not really allowed to cut corners in the early game, are they? Well, not too much anyway. But they've been doing things like neglecting speed, all sorts of things like that. And that's the corner that Oneofmany chose to cut in that game, and it just cost him dearly. So, will he actually play safer this game, or is he going to go for some kind of other, some other type of risky opening? I mean, he went Nexus first in a double Stargate. That's not exactly what you would consider safe and standard, but I mean, what else are you going to do if you're going up against a scary player like Quantic Hawk? Alright, so here we're getting going into Game 2. This is going to be on the map Cloud Kingdom, and up here in the top right, from Team StarCraft Ascension, we have our blue Protoss player, Oneofmany. And spawning down here in the bottom left, we have our red Zerg player. From Team Quantic, we have Hawk. Now, this is a much different map for this matchup. And why is it so different? Well, unlike Antigua Shipyard that has that wide ramp leading into the main base, we have a very narrow ramp. This is actually one of the most narrow natural expansion ramps that we have in the current ladder map pool, which makes it very, very good for things like Fort Fast expands. I mean, obviously, like, what Protoss doesn't forge fast expand on this map? Although I say that, and then I have seen things like weird, wonky, like, early gateway timings, like proxy gateways, all sorts of other things like that. I don't know. I mean, that's one of the interesting things about maps in this game, is that maps kind of develop like a culture unto themselves. Like, strategies become so dominant and so popular on it that players just start being like, okay, well, since the strategy is like pretty much the only thing that anybody ever does on this map, I'm really just gonna, like, you know, do like a counter build for that. And Quantic is actually kind of reading my mind here a little bit. This map is so popular for things like Nexus First Forge Fast expands that Quantic actually dropped his pool really, really early. That was like an 11 pool, I think. I was like a 10 or 11 spawning pool, and that will allow him to get Zerglings out pretty early and will completely disallow Oneofmany from actually going for that Nexus First. He's going to have to get down that Photon Cannon if he wants to hold this off. Now, no gases have gone down for Quantic, so for all intents and purposes, at least at this point, it does look like he will be following this up with a hatchery, but the presence of that pool does make it impossible for Oneofmany to actually go for a Nexus First type build. It does look like he is continuing to scout his opponent, which is actually a pretty smart thing to see if there are Zerglings actually on the way, to determine whether or not he actually needed to drop that first Photon Cannon before his Nexus, but wisely, because there are a couple Zerglings on the way, only 2 of them at the moment, but it's still not something you want to deal with as a Protoss player, is having Zerglings in your base. Because of his scouting, because of his decent scouting, and the fact that he knew that his opponent didn't have too many Zerglings out all that early, he was able to only produce that 1 Photon Cannon and then drop his Nexus. So this is going to turn into a pretty standard game from here on out. Now, the question is always, when a Zerg realizes that his opponent is going for this Forge Fast expand, it really does put the ball in the Zerg player's court. Do they go for things like a Baneling bust that we just saw from Quantic? Do they go for like an earlier Roach Warren and try and do things like Roach Baneling builds, Roach Zergling type builds, or do they just go straight for that fast third base that is really like the thing to do in the matchup? Most likely, because we don't see any sort of gases down from Hawk, he will probably once again go for that third base. But again, as he was in the last game, he isn't going for that third hatchery immediately. He is just continuing to build drones and Zerglings actually. Also, he has 6 Zerglings actually being produced, which I think is a little interesting. There are no units actually coming out on the field for Oneofmany, so there is really no threat of any sort of like Zealot attack or Zealot Sentry attack from his opponent. He's making these Zerglings, at least right now, it looks like, for the sole purpose of clearing out the rocks on the map. This is more Zerglings than I normally see produced, and the thing is that, oh, we also have drones being pulled over here. Huh. Okay, now this is getting interesting. What are these drones actually here for? Oh, I think I know what this is going to be. And actually, if Hawk actually decides that he wants to do this, this could actually be pretty cool. I think he's actually going to be going for a proxy hatchery. There it is. Okay, a proxy hatchery. Creep tubers are going down, and then he's actually going to start building spine crawlers out here. So this is actually going to be a spine crawler rush from Quantic Hawk, which is actually really cool, because I just saw this in the Team Liquid thread, or on either Reddit or Team Liquid. I'm actually not all that familiar with the way that Quantic Hawk actually plays very often, but somebody actually called that this is actually going to happen. So whoever that was, I think it was on Reddit, that you called that he was going to do some sort of spine crawler rush type thing. You are a prophet, because that is exactly what is going on. Now, these spine crawlers with this queen that will be able to use transfusion on them will actually be a pretty good opening against what Oneofmany actually has going for him. But he does have 3 photon cannons down, and actually that was kind of sloppy by Quantic Hawk. He did lose a few Zerglings, Zerglings that he didn't even really need to lose. Now, the one thing is that this is going to completely make it so that Oneofmany is not going to be able to expand to that third base location for a very long time. Even when these spine crawlers are actually cleared out, the creep is actually going to continue to spread to his third base location, and that is not going to make it. That's actually not going to make it all that easy for Oneofmany to actually take his expansion. He's going to have to get an observer out and clear out the creep before he can even think about taking a third base. So most likely, I don't think this is actually going to kill Oneofmany. These spine crawlers are really just here. They are picking away at some pylons. This one Immortal actually is able to take down like these spine crawlers almost by himself. But behind this, Quantic Hawk is going for his third hatchery. He does have both of his gas geysers down, but isn't actually mining from them yet. But a second Immortal is actually coming on the field for Oneofmany. Oneofmany is actually taking hull damage on that Immortal. That is not necessarily what he wants to do. He just needs to sit back and recharge the shields on those Immortals, but he's trying to get rid of this Spinecrawler before he actually loses his Forge. Losing the Forge will actually be a pretty big loss for Oneofmany because he will not actually be able to start any of his upgrades until after it is done. But Hawk does actually decides not to focus fire that Forge. That Forge only had 2 hits left on it from that Spinecrawler, but he was actually able to save that Forge. Now that Forge is going to start regenerating its shields. Meanwhile, Oneofmany is going to start clearing out the creep that has taken all over his third base, and behind this, Hawk has just been droning like a madman. He's up to 51 drones. He has more drones actually in production. No Lair Tech actually on the field for Hawk, as well as no Roach Warren either. So he really only has tech to produce Zerglings at this point. And he still is not on Lair Tech. He doesn't really have upgrades. He is banking some minerals at this point, so it does look like he actually wants to go, and there it is. He is producing 26 Zerglings right now, and a Baneling Nest also. Okay, so it does look like Quantic Hawk actually wants to go once again for a Zergling Baneling type unit composition in the this isn't even the mid game yet. We're only at 10 minutes in, so I still consider this I mean relatively early in the game. These Zerglings and Banelings won't actually be able to do all that much if Oneofmany actually starts reinforcing with additional zealots or sentries, but because there are force fields here, and force fields and sentries are actually pretty good at stopping Banelings and Zergling unit compositions. But still, Quantic Hawk is up to 102 supply, and most of that is actually in Zerglings, and he's actually continuing to make Zerglings. Zergling speed is just about to finish. There it goes. And now we have, how many Zerglings is that actually? That is actually 41 Zerglings, 53 Zerglings actually out on the field for Quantic Hawk, and he is just going to start using this very highly mobile Zerg force to actually completely shut down Quantic Hawk's attempt to actually go for a timing attack. These Zerglings are actually going to be able to... Oh, they almost managed to make it into the main base, but there are enough Zerglings that are actually here to force additional buildings out of Oneofmany, so he is not actually using resources right now to reinforce his attack, but he is halting that Zergling counterattack for the most part. Banelings are actually being morphed in. They do look like they want to bust down the front door of Oneofmany. Meanwhile, Oneofmany is actually going for the third base of Hawk. Hawk does actually have Banelings in production, but like I said earlier, though he does have force fields available, Oneofmany does in that army, but the force fields are actually not all that great, and the Banelings do actually manage to make it through and slaughter all of the Stalkers, and actually that is probably going to do it. With perfect force fields, Oneofmany might have been able to hold back those Banelings long enough for his sentries and Stalkers to actually pick them off one at a time. But because there were holes in those force fields, Hawk's Banelings were actually able to make it through and splash all over the relatively squishy Stalkers of Oneofmany, and that actually just did a ton of damage to Oneofmany's forces. So now the supply is now at 110 to 54. Banelings are being morphed in, and Zerglings are just continuing to just pick away at this wall. This is such an aggressive way to play Zerg in this matchup. I am not normally used to seeing this, and neither is Oneofmany by the looks of it. He has just been completely baffled by the Zergling Baneling build of Quantic Hawk. And like I said, folks, this is not something I normally see, but I mean, you guys there on Reddit, you guys definitely have some knowledge. You guys obviously are watching Hawk stream a lot more than I am, because like I wasn't prepared for that kind of build twice in one series. But Quantic Hawk is definitely demonstrating that there is a different way to play Protoss versus Zerg from what you will normally see in tournament style play. And Oneofmany, I mean, the thing is, he was playing that pretty standard. He wasn't doing anything super greedy. He wasn't doing anything like anything really out of the ordinary. It was really just Hawk dictating the pace of that game throughout. He opened with that Spinecrawler rush, and then followed it up with a Zergling Baneling unit composition, and the entire time his drone count actually wasn't all that high. I mean, if you look at like the Stefano style, like 11-minute Roach Max, you're pretty much at 70 drones by like 9 minutes in, maybe 8 minutes, 8 or 9 minutes in. I mean, Quantic Hawk was at 52 drones by the time that he started making all of those Zerglings and Banelings. His economy is still rather low, but it didn't really matter because he was playing a lot more aggressive than his opponent was really used to. I mean, that the only other player that I really see that utilizes Banelings and Zerglings that much. I mean, this might just be something that Quantum Cock really just does for show matches. I mean, it could be something that he doesn't actually use all that often in his standard play. I'm actually not all that sure because, like I said, I don't actually follow Hawk as much as I follow some other players. But I mean, maybe I should start. It does actually look like Hawk definitely knows what he's doing and does have his own way of playing each individual matchup. So that was a quick. So now in this best of 7 series, Oneofmany has taken a 2-0 deficit relatively early, and will he actually be able to come back in the series? By the looks of things right now, Hawk is just proving that he is just. I mean, he's in Grandmasters League for a reason. And he's sponsored by Team Quantic Gaming for a reason. So, I mean, he's definitely demonstrating a brilliant level of play. And like I said already, Oneofmany has a pretty good Protoss versus Zerg, at least by semi-professional standards. Some of his late game Protoss versus Zerg is like his multitasking is actually really, really good. Okay, I mean, SC. I'm being told that I need to update my stream title. So I'm going to be taking care of that for a moment. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to Team StarCraft Ascension for putting this show match together. I mean, friendly show matches like this are just good for everybody. They're just a fun way to spend a Saturday afternoon. Like if you're like me, just spending a Saturday afternoon watching, or in my case, casting StarCraft matches. And why is that actually going up? Sorry about that, guys. My browser is being very uncooperative right now. XSplit. I've been having problems with XSplit lately, just lagging my computer like really, really badly. I wonder if that's like an actual problem with XSplit, or if that's just my computer just not being able to handle some of the things that's actually going under it. So I apologize for the moment. Let me get this sorted out, and then we'll get back into the next game. Alright, I have been invited into the lobby, and I am still changing the title. Give me a moment. I'm actually not able to change the title while the stream is actually active, so I'm sorry about that. So I think actually, if you guys really want me to change the title that badly, I'm gonna actually have to take the stream down if I want to do that. Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, I'll actually have to turn the stream off if I want to actually change the broadcast title. So I don't know if you guys like really want to do it that if you guys really want to do it like if that's that big of a deal. Alright, so just to appease everybody, I am going to be shutting the stream off for just a moment while I change the broadcast title of my stream by popular demand, apparently. So I'll be right back in just a little bit. Stay tuned. I'll be back in just a moment with Game 3 of this series.